There we go. All right. All right. Okay, I think this thing's starting here. I think I'm actually... All right. Okay, I think this thing's starting here. Yeah. All right. I'm actually... All right. Let me get my shit together here. All right. So, firstly, I'd like to welcome everybody to the first episode of the... It's currently Malcara Creations episode, podcast, but I'll be coming up with some type of different name for that. But I've got a live chat going here. So okay, let me see if all right. I just need to go and put this on Facebook so that people can find it on there if they choose to do so. Come on. Sometimes computers make things so much more difficult. All right. Now, let me turn this off. I'll be adding music to this thing and all sorts of, I'll be dressing it up a little bit, come up with a some type of cover art for it. But welcome everybody. First off, wanted to go ahead and explain everything. I'm going to start recording every Monday, video and a podcast, and each show is going to have segments. This is going to be primarily a role-playing game podcast. I'm not going to be doing any like live gaming, at least not for the podcast. This is more about the talk, just about subjects related to role-playing games, and talk about different role-playing games. It's a talk show essentially, but it's also from my way to talk about my world that I'm creating and the video game that it's worked off of, and the different novels and stuff that I'm working on. Each show will have segments. Every show I'm going to try and get some tabletop RPG news every week. Just, relay different things that I found. Every week I'd like to do a different product review, so I'll definitely be taking suggestions for those. I'm also going to be doing every week different Neverwinter Nights Enhanced Edition and, the Legacy, we call it, I think, 169. Different news bits from that community. I'm the admin and creator of the Neverwinter Nights Facebook community group. And I, play the game. I'm pretty that's the game I'm creating my world for. And then every week I'll be doing a weekly update for my games, my worlds, some type of little, what I've gotten done, different things we've come up on, things we want to put out to the people in the community and get opinions, whatnot, I'm also going to be having guests occasionally, which could be either via Skype or in studio. It all depends. And then bonus episodes, I was thinking about if I get enough likes and whatnot for every episode, I could cover any RPG topic, including game companies, designers, game histories, gamer advice. I'm willing to talk about anything. I did a podcast episode for a guy named John Towers who does an episode of the Abercast. I'll put a link in the description to this episode of that episode, but I did one for the Satanic Panic of the 1980s and 90s because I was there. I was on the front lines of that thing. I dealt with that stuff as a kid and into my 20s. And now that we've been 20 years removed from that, there's been a lot of different revelations about what went down and why it went down and how it went down, and things that in my opinion, we need to still keep our eyes open for, because, there's still different religious organizations still to this day claiming that Dungeons and Dragons is a satanic tool or game, or it involves black magic. And, like I tell people, if the spells in that game were real, I wouldn't be sitting here. I would be in charge of the world, because I would have casted a lot of spells to make me pretty powerful. So, it's not real. It's a game. And the sad part is that most of the adults don't seem to realize that, But that's just something that we've dealt with for decades, But that's something that I've kind of taken as my kind of stance. And, I seem to know a lot about it, and I may even do an episode of it for this podcast, as a bonus episode, or I could talk one about, Gary Gygax, or I could talk one about the other guys that started TSR, or even TSR itself, any game company, any game. I just need we'll do, a poll, and, we'll vote, every week if we have to, and I'll do a bonus episode, and that'll give me stuff to research, and I think it'd be interesting. I think people might like that. I'd like to have a weekly Q&A session too, where essentially I either take questions via live chat, or I can put my email at the end of this, and you guys can send me messages via email, and I'll answer them on the weekly podcast, excuse me. I'm a smoker. I don't have COVID-19. Don't worry. But I'm still going to be releasing video of the world I'm designing for Neverwinter Nights and for Tabletop. It's mainly Neverwinter Nights. I'm slowly rebuilding it, which leads me to the changes of design. What pretty much is going on with my world. I went originally with this idea that there were two twin worlds. Think of like my head being the sun, okay, and there being two worlds, that orbit around my head at roughly about the same, place all the time. They're never, near each other. They're always constantly across from each other, and the sun's in the middle. So they can't see each other. Well, these two worlds, one of them originally was the world that all the fantasy races lived on. They didn't know about this other world. So for thousands of years, you had all the different, it was a fantasy world in and of itself with all the races and different cultures and everything going on there. Well, at one point, all the humanoid monstrous races, your orcs, your goblins, your kobolds, your lizardmen, your giants, your anything that looks human or roughly human shape, all kind of teamed up together at some point and formed what they called the Brotherhood. The Brotherhood realized that there was a bigger threat to not only themselves, but this other continent of races and cultures that were your humans, your elves, your dwarves, your halflings, your gnomes. And there was one tribe of orcs on that continent called the Wound Clan. It's one that me and my friends kind of came up with. We'll be talking about them at a later time when I can get my buddy Corky on here and maybe another guest or two. I might try to get the original Wounds on here and, just talk about it. I think that would be kind of cool. But essentially, a war happened, a war erupted, and because on the one continent, your elves and your dwarves and your humans and your gnomes and the halflings, they wouldn't work together. They wanted to kind of keep culturally separate from each other. Well, by not working together, that kind of caused their downfall when the Brotherhood came from their continent to the continent of the, normal fantasy races, as I tend to call them. When this war erupted, the each race started to fall, and the survivors started falling back towards the human lands, and as more lands were taken by the Brotherhood, the humans and the remnants of the other cultures and races came to the realization that they needed to either make a last stand or find a way off of this planet. And by luck, they discovered an ancient temple. Inside this ancient temple was a portal that took them to another world that was uninhabited by any monstrous humanoid races, but it wasn't inhabited by any of your standard fantasy races like elves or dwarves or anybody. So they realized that they could go there and make a fresh start. So in a last-ditch effort, groups of each one were chosen to either leave or stay. And the ones who stayed made a valiant last stand to buy the other people time to get out. Well, they did so, and it was successful. Because after the last man fell, the last couple people went in through the portal, and once they had emerged on the other side, they closed the portal, and to the Brotherhood's detriment, they couldn't enter that temple. And you'd have to either play the game or read the novels or whatnot to find out why, but they couldn't even go in it. So they couldn't traverse because there were things in there set up so that only certain races and classes could. Now, the Brotherhood didn't realize this. I'll go in more detail in another video about that all, but essentially, thousands of years go by, the Brotherhood forgets about those other races. They take in and adapt all the cultures and everything. They literally just, everything they find, they study and they learn. And through a few captives that they manage to keep to translate things, they were able to learn how to decipher different books and different texts and whatnot. So they effectively, for a few thousand years, started studying these different cultures and races as ways of life and started adapting them to their own. So 2,000 years go by. An adventuring party on accident stumbles through the temple on the other side where the portal on Kelstrata, which is the homeworld of the humans and dwarves and elves, the standard fantasy races, that's they stumble through that portal onto Malkara. And as they emerge from the temple, they discover a world they've never seen before and that people never have thought of. It's going to be where all these, the Brotherhood have essentially taken over this continent and they've taken over all these cult races' ways of life. So you have, goblins who are mimicking elves. You have, bugbears mimicking dwarfs, so on and so forth. But then in each culture, which there's going to be like a Egyptian style culture, a Japanese style culture, an African style culture, a Greco-Roman style culture, and a Viking style culture. Each one has different members of the different monstrous humanoid races or the Brotherhood. They don't stick to just one. It's they each culture has a wide variety of members of each humanoid monstrous race. So what you get is these creatures have located areas that have been protected from their kind, but they're not protected from these other humanoids. So they need people of elven and dwarven and human stature to get into some of these ancient sites and find out what's in there. And other sites that will be discovered in future things. And then there's also, just the whole politics of that whole situation. Once, enough people from the other world start funneling in there, things are going to happen on other continents, and world events will change. And I've got a whole storyline planned out for probably the next 10 to 15 years of gaming, just, through a series of modules and whatnot. And the way I'm building the world for Neverwinter is slightly different than a lot of servers I've seen. A lot of servers I've seen build one kingdom and they'll have, 2 or 3 major cities or 2 or 3 villages. I'm building it from one city and I'm working my way out that way. And I'm only building roughly between a 15 to 30 mile radius around that city. And that's it. After that, anything outside of there will be accessible via what I call modules, which are essentially adventuring modules. I will build areas separate for those that correspond to each module, and each module will require, a certain number of players, certain number of classes, just specific levels, and so players will need to team up and go on these in order to be successful. I mean, it might be players of higher levels would be more successful in solo ones if they tackled some of the lower level ones, but there's going to be ones where you need a rogue, you need a cleric, you need a mage, just to do certain things throughout the thing to pass different points so that you can get, through this thing. And that first city it's the capital of that kingdom, but it's called Iron Den. Iron and then Den with 2 N's in it. And it's all one word. But if you think of it, think of like if you're a fan of Superman and you've ever seen Bizarro World. It's kind of like Bizarro World, where except instead of Bizarro Superman and Bizarro things, it's almost like a mirror, it's like if an elf and a dwarf and a adventuring party walked out of this temple, and there are goblins selling wares on the street and orcs as the town guard, and gnolls walking around, playing lutes, and that's the type of world that they've walked out into, and I think it'll be very interesting for players who want to try something different. And also with this little update here, I wanted to uh, talk about some of my life changes. I've personally been meditating. That's just something I've had to learn how to do. It's helped me a lot with a lot of everything going on. Um, my divorce is going to be finalized here pretty soon. Um, and with all that, comes a new beginning. And that's the way I'm looking at it. It is what it is. No reason to, you know, hold any grudges. Uh, it's not so much that I'm forgiving. I'm just choosing to not allow what other people did to destroy me. So I'm going to be learning, I'm moving past that. I'm growing myself. I'm bettering myself. It's been a day by day process, and every day I just find a new way to improve. So, I mean, it's, you know, something that I've needed to do for a long time. Uh, and with that, I'm also starting to do yoga to help strengthen my lower back because I have some minor back problems. There, I'm tired of my hair sticking out. Uh, but yeah, I had some minor back problems that I didn't take care of for years, and I didn't really understand what I had done. Many years ago, I worked as a carpenter and as a laborer, and I was lowering stuff down from the second floor to the first floor to someone down there, and there was a ledge, and the guy below me couldn't see where I was stepping, and I couldn't see where the ledge was, and I went down 2 stories into the basement. And when I did, I compressed my spine. Um, so essentially, I have a compressed spine that, I daily I have to decompress it. I'm constantly popping my back. I'm, doing yoga now to strengthen my back. I've actually put weight back on. I'm up to 150 pounds again, which is something that I didn't never thought I'd be able to achieve in years. But and it may not be much to many people, but to me, that's a lot because for most of my life I weighed like 120, 125, So for me to add that little bit of oomph to it, it makes me a lot happier. Uh, but with all that, there's my new outlook of, trying to remain positive, just trying to remain focused, and trying to put out a quality product that players are going to be, interested in. And with this is going to be modifications to the 3.5 rules that were at one time Dungeons and Dragons. It's going to I'm going to put out a D20 licensed product or D20 open game licensed product that will modify that era rules into what suits this world better, and I think that players will like a little bit more. It definitely gives casters that equal amount of firepower that I feel that they are left out on in tabletop games when compared to some of your other classes that are more martial or weapon based. Um, I mean, that's a debate for another day, but I just wanted to get this out there. Don't want to make it, too crazy, but I will be putting another video out on Monday, probably talking a little bit about that first area. Um, I will be doing another episode of this, essentially the first official episode of this, the Malkara update. I'm thinking about calling it the Yinzer Sage, just because I'm from Pittsburgh, and I had a podcast years ago, or a few years ago called the Sober Dwarven Sage, because I'm a recovering alcoholic. I've been sober 14 years now, and I'm short, so my friends always used to call me a dwarf because I grow my facial hair. I've shaved recently, but you know, I uh, needed a change. But pretty much, I'm thinking about, yeah, I might go with that Yinzer sage and attach it to the Melcar Creations page. So uh, that'll be where you can find episodes of that. I guess I'll be calling it that, the podcast that. But as I said, I'll be taking questions. I'll put my email at the end of in the description of this, and I hope to hear from people. And if not, I'll make up some questions. I don't care. I ain't afraid. But I want everybody to go out and have a good. Well, maybe not good. It's okay. Maybe not going out right now is a good time idea, but be careful. Wash your hands a bunch. Don't touch your face. I washed my hands, so it's okay. But uh, take care of each other. Think of your neighbor. This is a time where we all kind of need to look out for each other and not so much for ourselves. But good luck trying to get most of the people in the world to hear that. But all right, everybody, I think we're gonna go ahead and start wrapping this up. And I will talk to you guys next week or this coming Monday. So everybody have a good one, and so long, and game on later. Peace.